I am Locutus of Borg. Resistance is futile.
When Star Trek: The Next Generation premiered on September 28, 1987, few people anticipated it would become one of the most influential science fiction television series of all time. The show ran for 7 seasons, produced 178 episodes, spawned 4 feature films, and created a legacy that continues to influence television production decades later. However, the path to creating this groundbreaking series was far from smooth. Behind the polished starship corridors and philosophical discussions about humanity's future lay a complex tapestry of behind-the-scenes drama, creative compromises, and production challenges that nearly derailed the entire project before it ever launched. The story of how The Next Generation came to be is just as fascinating as the episodes themselves, filled with casting battles, financial constraints, and personalities clashing over the creative direction of a beloved franchise. Most fans have watched the 7 seasons multiple times, debated the finest episodes over drinks with fellow enthusiasts, and adopted Captain Picard as their ideal leader. Yet the remarkable facts that shaped the show remain largely unknown to casual viewers. From how an English Shakespearean actor with no hair nearly destroyed the show before it began, to how the producers quite literally raided old filing cabinets for scripts, the production of The Next Generation was built on ingenuity, desperation, and creative problem-solving. Understanding these facts transforms how we watch the series, revealing the human story beneath the science fiction spectacle. Each revelation demonstrates that great television isn't born from grand visions alone, but from the countless decisions, compromises, and challenges that occur in the spaces between the cameras. The first shocking fact involves the casting of the show's central character, Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Gene Roddenberry possessed a clear vision for this role, a commanding figure with the physical presence and screen authority of William Shatner, someone who could fill the enormous shoes of the original series captain. When Patrick Stewart entered the casting office, Roddenberry nearly ended the conversation immediately. Here was a bald English, classically trained actor with decades of Shakespeare performances under his belt, representing everything Roddenberry had not envisioned. The studio executives at Paramount, however, sensed something the creator initially missed. They asked Stewart to audition wearing a hairpiece, a specific wig that his then-wife Sheila Falconer had to FedEx from London to Los Angeles. After performing a scene with the hairpiece, the executives asked to see him without it. In that moment, something shifted. John Pike, the president of Paramount Network Television, made the crucial call: hire the Englishman and discard the wig. Roddenberry remained skeptical, and when the casting was announced publicly, fans erupted in protest, sending angry letters insisting the show was dead on arrival. They could not have been more wrong. The second revelation concerns Michael Dorn's character Worf, a Klingon security officer whose presence became integral to the series' identity and success. Yet Worf was never part of the original plan. Gene Roddenberry's initial series, Bible, deliberately banned familiar alien species from the original series, wanting a clean break with the past and a forward-looking vision of the Federation. This meant no Vulcans, no Romulans, and certainly no Klingon. As production approached, however, Roddenberry reconsidered the creative decision. The symbolic power of a Klingon standing in a Starfleet uniform on the Enterprise's bridge spoke volumes about how far galactic civilization had progressed. A former enemy had become an ally, and that single image could communicate the show's optimistic message to audiences instantly. Worf was added so late that he wasn't included in the original casting breakdowns, and the bridge set had already been constructed without a seat for him. Throughout Season 1, viewers noticed that Worf remained standing, drifting between consoles because the furniture was fixed and no space had been allocated for him. When Michael Dorn entered the audition room, he remained in character throughout, silent and intensely still, projecting the bearing of someone who had actually experienced military conflict. Roddenberry immediately expanded the role, and when Denise Crosby departed after Season 1, Worf inherited her position as Chief of Security, finally receiving both a proper seat and narrative importance. The third fact reveals that a significant portion of the Next Generation's early stories originated not from writers' rooms or brainstorming sessions, but from a forgotten filing cabinet. During the late 1970s, Paramount had developed a complete television revival of the original Star Trek called Phase 2. Sets were constructed, a series Bible was drafted, scripts were written, and actors were contracted. The project was remarkably advanced when it was suddenly redirected into Star Trek, the motion picture. The scripts and story frameworks were shelved but never destroyed. Nearly a decade later, when The Next Generation launched, producers quietly returned to those archives for material. During Season 2, when the 1988 writers' strike halted fresh script development and the production faced a compressed timeline, they discovered a Phase 2 story involving a character named Lieutenant Elia, who becomes impregnated by a mysterious alien force. The producers substituted Counselor Deanna Troi for the original character and aired the episode as the Season 2 premiere under the title The Child. Similarly, another Phase 2 script originally featuring Captain Kirk confronting a woman claiming to be a mythological devil was adapted and retitled as a TNG episode where the supposed devil is revealed to be an elaborate con. This resourcefulness allowed the production to meet its deadlines while maintaining quality. The fourth revelation illuminates how the physical production operated on borrowed and repurposed materials. If scripts came from an archive, the sets and props came from storage facilities. The Next Generation became extraordinarily skilled at repurposing physical assets from the original series and early films. The transporter room offers a striking example of this creative reuse. The circular glass pads from the 1960s Enterprise, the very ones Kirk and Spock stood upon before beaming into dangerous situations, were removed, inverted, and mounted directly into the ceiling of the Next Generation's transporter set. These same lenses continued their tour through the franchise, eventually appearing on the Enterprise A in Star Trek films and later aboard Voyager. The show presented itself as a bold leap into the future while quietly hauling the past along in every frame, demonstrating that great television doesn't require infinite budgets. The fifth shocking fact concerns the show's iconic opening theme, which is technically not an original composition for the series. The fanfare opening the title sequence comes directly from Alexander Courage's theme for the original 1960s Star Trek, while the main march was composed by Jerry Goldsmith for Star Trek, the motion picture, in 1979. Series composer Dennis McCarthy had written an original opening specifically for The Next Generation, complete and polished, but producers ultimately set it aside in favor of this carefully assembled combination of existing material. This decision proved instrumental in creating one of science fiction television's most recognizable pieces of music. The sixth fact involves the ingenious practical effects that created the transporter sequence, one of the most recognizable visual elements in television history. The effects team achieved the shimmering transporter effect without a single line of computer code. They filled a glass canister with water and added finely ground glitter, metallic confetti, or aluminum particles. When they wanted a more dynamic quality, they dropped in Alka-Seltzer tablets to generate rising bubbles. This mixture was stirred, blasted with high-intensity light against a black background, and filmed. The resulting shimmer appeared alive because it genuinely was organic, governed by water and light rather than programming. Actors were filmed standing still on the pad, then stepped out of frame. The empty set was filmed again, and the glitter footage was layered over the sequence, with added vertical streaks and glowing columns in post-production. The transporter effect didn't go fully digital until Voyager, by which point computer technology had finally caught up to what a jar of glitter and some antacid tablets had been achieving for years. The seventh revelation exposes how Season 1 was nearly unwatchable due to Gene Roddenberry's insistence that the Enterprise crew could not argue with each other. In his mind, humans in the 24th century would be too evolved for interpersonal conflict. Drama requires tension, however, and when every disagreement had to resolve into calm agreement, stories lost their teeth. Episodes felt like expensive meetings rather than space adventures. Matters worsened when Leonard Mays, Roddenberry's personal lawyer with no official position but enormous behind-the-scenes power, began rewriting approved scripts without authorization. Nearly 30 writers cycled through in that single season. As Roddenberry's health declined, producers Rick Berman and Michael Piller slowly took control and quietly started breaking the rules. Berman kept a small bust of Roddenberry on his desk, and when a writer pitched a story involving crew conflict, Berman would slip a tiny blindfold over the bust's eyes, needing no explanation. The show became great the moment it was finally allowed to be honest about human nature. The eighth fact explains how Q, one of the next generation's most beloved characters, only exists because the pilot ran too short. Encounter at Farpoint, built around a central mystery, needed 2 hours, but only had 1 hour of material. Roddenberry added a second storyline featuring a godlike being putting all humanity on trial for its past crimes. That being was Q. The pilot ended up feeling like 2 separate shows running simultaneously. Q didn't really affect the Farpoint investigation. His job was to threaten, vanish, and reappear looking important while the clock ticked toward 2 hours. He was cast on the advice of Leonard Mays, who suggested John Delancey based on watching him on Days of Our Lives. Audiences fell in love with him, and Delancey transformed Q from a runtime fix into something the show couldn't imagine living without. The ninth revelation involves how Whoopi Goldberg called the producers herself, unwilling to wait for an invitation. As a child, she watched Michelle Nichols play Lieutenant Uhura on the original Star Trek, and that image of a black woman on the bridge treated as an equal meant everything to her. By the late 1980s, Goldberg was one of Hollywood's biggest stars, but wanted to be part of this legacy anyway. The producers assumed someone was pranking them until LeVar Burton verified her sincerity. When she met Roddenberry, she was direct. She wasn't seeking screen time or career advancement, but wanted to honor the legacy that had shaped her childhood. Roddenberry created an entirely new character, Guinan, an Aloran designed to exist outside the normal chain of command, the person crew members sought when rules couldn't help. Goldberg took a significant pay cut because, to her, it wasn't a job, but a thank you. The 10th fact reveals that Patrick Stewart never unpacked his suitcases. As a respected stage actor, syndicated science fiction wasn't part of his plan. His agent's pitch suggested the show would probably fail. They'd film episodes, collect money, and he'd return to England when it was canceled. Stewart arrived in Los Angeles and moved into a small furnished apartment, leaving everything in suitcases. He was waiting for the cancellation call, wanting to leave quickly. Seasons passed, ratings climbed, and the call never came. Somewhere in season 3, he stopped expecting it. The suitcases became a private joke as he stayed long enough to help define an era. The 11th shocking revelation involves how the episode Datalore was fundamentally altered when Brent Spiner rejected the original concept. Early drafts featured a female android named Laura built for dangerous repair work, designed to be a romantic interest for Data. Spiner found this too safe and pitched something riskier. Data's exact twin, same face but completely different inside. Not Data's quiet curiosity, but something darker. The producers agreed, and Laura became Lore, Data's dark mirror, and one of the series' most unsettling presences. The 12th fact concerns how A Matter of Time was specifically written for Robin Williams. The character Berlinghoff Rasmussen required someone who could talk circles around everyone and stay unpredictable. Williams wanted the part, but Spielberg's Hook needed him full-time. With a pregnant wife and a punishing schedule, Williams had to pass. Matt Frewer stepped in and brought exactly what the role needed, becoming one of the show's most memorable one-episode characters. The 13th revelation demonstrates how The Next Generation became the first major Hollywood series to formally accept scripts from everyday people. At its peak, the show received between 3,000 and 5,000 scripts annually. Every single one got read by 5 full-time readers. Yesterday's Enterprise, widely considered one of the best episodes ever made, came straight from that open submission pile. The 14th fact involves Wil Wheaton's sacrifice when he gave up a significant film role after being told the show needed him, only to discover his character had been rewritten out entirely. Whether deliberate or not, this betrayal fractured his relationship with the production. Finally, the 15th revelation shows how Gates McFadden challenged the system and changed the show for the better. fired after Season 1 for asking uncomfortable questions about Dr. Crusher's characterization. She was brought back by audience demand and cast support. Her return resulted in a character with more authority, agency, and story than the first version ever possessed, proving that sometimes standing up for what's right ultimately transforms the creative product itself. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.